All right, we have a segment here that goes from the point -2, -1 to the point 4, 4. And we're trying to find how to divide this segment up into 5 equal sized pieces. All right, so if I want to travel from this point to this point, I'm going to make a bunch of stops along the way. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm going to divide it into 5 equal sized pieces. Well, I mean, this doesn't look easy because I have no idea how to do this, right? No, but let's break this down into a simpler problem. We've talked about how if I want to travel from one point to another, there are 2 components to my travel. There's an up-down component, that's a y component, and there's a left-right component. There's an x component. And we can break our trip down into those 2 components to sort of simplify this calculation. So if we look here for the y component, and here is the x component, and keep in mind when I draw these arrows, we're not actually traveling along these paths. I'm just using the arrows to measure how far the x and y components for each one are. So to travel from here to here, we travel 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So our change in x is 5 spaces up. And here, we're traveling 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Well, that was y. What am I talking about? That's our change in y. Oops. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So our change in x is 6. So traveling from here to here, we've traveled. Once we get here, we are 5 spaces higher up and 6 spaces further to the right. And again, the arrows are just to, it's like placing a ruler up next to it to see how far we traveled. That's all. Well, look at this. If we're going to divide this into 5 equal sized trips, this part is easy to divide into 5 equal sized trips, right? So as we're traveling along, if we wanted to break this down into 5 steps, each step would bring us 1 unit closer in the x direction. So that we can actually mark the points now. Travel up a unit, we must be right here. Up another unit, we're 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 right there. So now we've divided it up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And we can easily find the y coordinates for these points. This one's -2, -1, or sorry, this is -1 for a y coordinate, 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now, the tricky part then is to figure out what the x coordinates are. Well, that's a little bit trickier. Well, we have a total change in x of 6 units, and we want to break that down into 5 equal sized pieces. Well, if we want to take anything and divide it into a number of equal sized pieces, we just divide, right? So our change in x for each one of these is going to be the full 6 divided by 5. And we just leave that as a fraction, 6/5. And so we move over 6/5 of a space every time. But let's turn that into, well, no, let's not. Let's leave it as a fraction. 6/5. All right. So we start at -2, and we'd have to do, hold on a second. Okay, yeah, so I wanted to get my fraction calculator out here. Let's make this a little easier. All right, well, let's see. So we start out with x equals -2. So there we go, clear. -2, clear. -2, and we're going to add 6/5. And that's going to give us -4/5. So right here, I'll kind of write this up here. This y coordinate, or x coordinate, is -4/5. Then we're going to add another 6/5. That gives us 2/5. So this one here, so we've crossed over the y-axis, and that's -2/5. So add another 6/5. That's 1 3/5, which I'm going to rewrite as so that's going to be 8/5. So that's not 8/5, which is 1 2/5, and plus another 6/5, plus 6/5 gives us 2 4/5. 2 4/5, or that's also the same as 14/5. 14/5. And notice If we keep them as improper fractions, it's 2/5 to 8/5, 2 to 8 plus 6, 8 to 14 plus 6. And then finally we'll take this and add 6 more fifths and we get 4, which is the x coordinate for right here. We're at 4. So now we know the x and y coordinates for all these points, so we can actually write them in. The first one would be negative 4/5, comma, let's see, 0, and then 2/5, comma, 1, and here we have 8/5, comma, 2, here we have 14/5, comma, 3, and then finally 4/4. Right? So again, the overall process is, instead of trying to decide how to divide this up into 5 equal sized pieces right from the get-go, which is too complicated, we're going to break that trip down into 2 components, a vertical component and a horizontal component. Unfortunately for us, the vertical component was easily divided into 5 pieces, just 1 step each. The horizontal component, the x component, was a little trickier, but remember, you just take the entire trip, divide it into whatever number of pieces, is just, that distance divided by whatever number of pieces. 6 units divided by 5 is 6/5 units per step. And then we just had to get our fraction calculator out and carefully add 6/5 to each one, which you could do without the fraction calculator, but it'd be more complicated, and it's early in the morning, and I'd be more likely to make mistakes. I make enough mistakes as it is. All right. Well, good luck with that.